chapter 13 of Isaiah, and my hope is to at least get to chapter 18. Now, if that happens, great. If it doesn't happen, guess what? We'll be back next week. All the chapters are pretty short, except for chapter 14. I think it's 32 verses, 33, but we'll get through it. And I just like the song. And when you listen, if you can, I know some of you are following along. It's kind of like you're reading it twice in your mind when you follow along while someone else is reading. As kids in my classroom, when we're reading, I give everybody the book and for certain things, and I'm like, follow. When I'm reading, or sometimes I cheat, y'all, and I find the book read on YouTube, and I let YouTube read for the kids. But I'm like, sometimes sometimes it's a movie star, or sometimes someone that's real dramatic, and just so they can hear somebody else's voice too. But I'm like, follow along, because they'll get lazy and just be like, and then you know what happens when you do that? You start thinking about the fact that you've been working so long, you haven't been able to cook dinner, and Betty only think about that she smell like chicken, and then bring Pastor P. But then. And you start thinking about what you got to do when you get home, because it's easy to drift off when you're not focused. So just follow along. Hopefully this speaker will act right, because it already cut off already. It acts like it's too busy. It's like, if you're not going to use me, I'm going to shut off.
Connection successful.
But we're going to listen to chapter 13.
Isaiah 15.
Okay.
A prophecy again.
I know.
Isaiah 13. A prophecy against Babylon that Isaiah, son of Amoz, saw. Raise a banner on a bare hilltop. Shout to them, beckon to them, to enter the gates of the nobles. I have commanded those I prepared for battle. I have summoned my warriors to carry out my wrath, those who rejoice in my triumph. Listen, a noise on the mountains, like that of a great multitude. Listen, an uproar among the kingdoms, like nations massing together. The Lord Almighty is mustering an army for war. They come from faraway lands, from the ends of the heavens. The Lord and the weapons of his wrath to destroy the whole country. Wail, for the day of the Lord is near. It will come like destruction from the Almighty. Because of this, all hands will go limp. Every heart will melt with fear. Terror will seize them. Pain and anguish will grip them. They will writhe like a woman in labor. They will look aghast at each other, their faces aflame. See, the day of the Lord is coming, a cruel day with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land desolate and destroy the sinners within it. The stars of heaven and their constellations will not show their light. The rising sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. I will punish the world for its evil, the wicked for their sins. I will put an end to the arrogance of the haughty, and will humble the pride of the ruthless. I will make people scarcer than pure gold, more rare than the gold of Ophir. Therefore, I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will shake from its place at the wrath of the Lord Almighty, in the day of his burning anger. Like a hunted gazelle, like sheep without a shepherd, they will all return to their own people. They will flee to their native land. Whoever is captured will be thrust through. All who are caught will fall by the sword. Their infants will be dashed to pieces before their eyes. Their houses will be looted, and their wives violated. See, I will stir up against them the Medes, who do not care for silver and have no delight in gold. Their bows will strike down the young men. They will have no mercy on infants, nor will they look with compassion on children. Babylon, the jewel of kingdoms, the pride and glory of the Babylonians, will be overthrown by God like Sodom and Gomorrah. She will never be inhabited or lived in through all generations. There no nomads will pitch their tents. There no shepherds will rest their flocks. But desert creatures will lie there, Jackals will fill her houses. There the owls will dwell, and there the wild goats will leap about. Hyenas will inhabit her strongholds, jackals her luxurious palaces. Her time is at hand, and her days will not be prolonged.
I don't know why people mess with God. I forgot to share with you our objectives for this section. It's called Prophecies Concerning the Nations. I'm going to survey the prophecies of Isaiah concerning the nations surrounding Judah, related to the rise and fall of Babylon and the restoration of Israel after her captivity, to glean the importance of an obedient trust in the Lord and waiting for his ultimate deliverance. There was some debate as I was studying on why Isaiah chose to talk about Babylon first when Assyria was such a bigger enemy to Judah than Babylon was. There was even a time where Babylon was under Assyrian rule, but Babylon has a lot of history with Judah, Jerusalem as well. You know, the story of the 3 Hebrew boys happened in Babylon. The story of Daniel in the lion's den happened in Babylon. So there's some history there as well. And you know, God can do it any way he wants to do it. You know, we always think that we know better than him, and we can say how things should be. But scholars, you know, they always think, you know, they know it all. That's why they scholars. But just, you know, sometimes I think they just debate to debate. I don't think it matters which one he prophesies about taking out first. Bottom line is he took them all out. So it starts with the judgment of Babylon. And basically these chapters are really just talking about how God's going to take out all the people that mistreated Jerusalem, Judah and Jerusalem. So this first section is about the judgment against Babylon, and it covers chapter 13, verses 1 through 6. We're going to talk about the judgment is announced. He says he's about to do it. It's about to go down. And he, in verses 13 through, chapter 13, verses 1 through 5, he talks about the banner being raised, which is the summoning of the army for battle. Now, this is the army that the Lord is going to use to destroy Babylon. He uses who he wants to use, and I think I've said this many times before, God can use anybody or anything to achieve his purposes. I mean, he could have just sent a COVID-19 virus and taken Babylon out, but when you think of Babylon, it was a great nation, and what better way to punish a great nation than to have them overthrown and destroyed? You know what I mean? If they just, you know, he wanted them to suffer. So he talks about the coming destruction in the day of the Lord. And the day of the Lord always refers to a time when God comes back, or when God does what he says he's going to do. You know, I mean, he told him he was going to take him out. And this is what he does in these sections. He talks about how it's going to be utterly destroyed. It's going to be desolate. Desert animals are going to inhabit their homes. No crops are going to grow. I mean, he said they're going to violate your... he got to the point. He said they're going to violate your wives, take out the babies, the kids. How could God do that to the children? The babies, I'll forget Egypt. You know what I mean? What did he do? He said, if your door frame is covered by the lamb's blood, firstborn is gone. You know, he didn't play. When his wrath was released, it was released. And if you weren't right, then anyone connected to you would suffer. The instrument and the extent of God's judgment is what he talked about in verses 17 through 22. He's going to stir up the Medes against them. And the thing about the Medes was they did not, you know, a lot of times, you know, when you would hire someone out, Deacon Freeman, you give them silver or you give them gold so they will fight for you. The Medes didn't care about silver or gold. All they cared about was killing people. Taking people out. So he chose them to do exactly what they like to do to the people he wanted it done to. He picked the right person. You know, when you watch those movies and they hire somebody to take someone out. Yeah, that's basically what Jesus did with the Medes. Got them all excited. And, you know, it was like a prize too, you know, because Babylon was this great nation. So if they, you know, took them out, then who was going to be the great next nation? They are. You know, when you knock off the champion, you the champion. All right, so God stirred them up, and he said that Babylon will be desolate, destroyed, like Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, we all know the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah and why Jesus destroyed those cities, because they were living some ungodly lifestyles, and God took them out, utterly destroyed them. He destroyed them so bad, he told Lot, don't look back. He told him and his wife not to look. It was going to be so bad, I know he didn't want them to see it. He said, don't look back. And they running for their lives, and his wife looked back, and she turned to a pillar of salt. Now they got to listen to God. So that's how God's wrath was burning against Babylon, that he was going to make them desolate like Sodom and Gomorrah. All right? So moving in to chapter 14, God jumps back to talk about his mercy on Israel. So let's listen to this. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in chapter 14. He talks about his mercy on Israel, then he talks about his judgment against Assyria and his judgment against Philistia. I mean, he's got a lot going on here, so make sure you pay attention.
Isaiah 14. The Lord will have compassion on Jacob. Once again he will choose Israel and will settle them in their own land. Foreigners will join them and unite with the descendants of Jacob. Nations will take them and bring them to their own place. And Israel will take possession of the nations and make them male and female servants in the Lord's land. They will make captives of their captors and rule over their oppressors. On the day the Lord gives you relief from your suffering and turmoil and from the harsh labor forced on you, you will take up this taunt against the king of Babylon, how the oppressor has come to an end, how his fury has ended. The Lord has broken the rod of the wicked, the scepter of the rulers, which in anger struck down peoples with unceasing blows, and in fury subdued nations with relentless aggression. All the lands are at rest and at peace. They break into singing. Even the junipers and the cedars of Lebanon gloat over you and say, now that you have been laid low, no one comes to cut us down. The realm of the dead below is all astir to meet you at your coming. It rouses the spirits of the departed to greet you. All those who are leaders in the world, it makes them rise from their thrones. All those who are kings over the nations, they will all respond. They will say to you, you also have become weak as we are. You have become like us. All your pomp has been brought down to the grave, along with the noise of your harps. Maggots are spread out beneath you and worms cover you. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth. You who once laid low the nations, you said in your heart, I will ascend to the heavens. I will raise my throne above the stars of God. I will sit enthroned on the mount of assembly on the utmost heights of Mount Zaphon. I will ascend above the tops of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. But you are brought down to the realm of the dead, to the depths of the pit. Those who see you stare at you, they ponder your fate. Is this the man who shook the earth and made kingdoms tremble? The man who made the world a wilderness, who overthrew its cities and would not let his captives go home? All the kings of the nations lie in state, each in his own tomb. But you are cast out of your tomb like a rejected branch. You are covered with the slain, with those pierced by the sword, those who descend to the stones of the pit, like a corpse trampled underfoot. You will not join them in burial, for you have destroyed your land and killed your people. Let the offspring of the wicked never be mentioned again. Prepare a place to slaughter his children for the sins of their ancestors. They are not to rise to inherit the land and cover the earth with their cities. I will rise up against them, declares the Lord Almighty. I will wipe out Babylon's name and survivors, her offspring and descendants, declares the Lord. I will turn her into a place for owls and into swampland. I will sweep her with the broom of destruction, declares the Lord Almighty. The Lord Almighty has sworn, surely as I have planned, so it will be, and as I have purposed, so it will happen. I will crush the Assyrian in my land. On my mountains I will trample him down. His yoke will be taken from my people, and his burden removed from their shoulders. This is the plan determined for the whole world. This is the hand stretched out over all nations. For the Lord Almighty has purposed, and who can thwart him? His hand is stretched out, and who can turn it back? This prophecy came in the year King Ahaz died. Do not rejoice, all you Philistines, that the rod that struck you is broken. From the root of that snake will spring up a viper. Its fruit will be a darting, venomous serpent. The poorest of the poor will find pasture, and the needy will lie down in safety. But your root I will destroy by famine. It will slay your survivors. Wail, you gate, howl, you city. Melt away, all you Philistines. A cloud of smoke comes from the north, and there's not a straggler in its ranks. What answer shall be given to the envoys of that nation? The Lord has established Zion, and in her his afflicted people will find refuge.
I tell y'all, we blessed, man. We blessed. Chapter 14, verses 1 through 2 speaks on, it says, the Lord's mercy on Israel. Anytime he mentions the house of Jacob, he's referring to Israel. It says they will be resettled in their own land. So after God destroys their enemies, that remnant will again be settled in their own land. Strangers will receive them and even serve them. So people who might not have been before had anything to do with them will help them out. Kind of like when they were getting ready to leave Egypt in the middle of the night, and God told them to go to their neighbors and ask them for things. And they just gave them gold and silver or whatever they wanted. They probably didn't even know why they was, oh yeah, take this, take some bread, take this silver, take these candlestick holders. Didn't even know why they were doing it. And this is the same thing now when they come back. They're strangers. That strangers will receive them and even serve them. That's what happens when you serve God, and He'll take care of you. Verses 14, I'll keep saying verse. Chapter 14, verses 3 through 21. I'm going to break these down, talk about, it's basically a song, a proverb, and it's talking about the destruction and all the suffering that the king of Babylon is going to go through. It says, to be sung when the Lord gives rest to Israel. So basically, after he delivers them, they get to sing a song about the guy he delivered them from. Kind of like a na-na-na boo-boo. God is going to get you. It says, verses 4 and 6, the oppressor's fall ends the cruelty of Babylon. So when he falls, Babylon has no more control over Israel. the earth and the trees break out and saw everybody happy. when the earth and the trees start singing, when somebody falls down, that means you was not a good person, amen, and God had to take care of you. That was in verses 7 through 8, and verses 9 through 11. It says, Sheol is excited over its reception of the king. You know, when hell is excited about receiving, you was up here kicking. Satan just went like, reminds me of old shows where they would have the fake devil down there and he have his pitchfork and like, yeah, come on down. Verses 12 through 17 talk about the extent of the fall of the king of Babylon. It went on and on about how he thought he was all that and he was better than all the other kings he had put down. And they all gloating now because they're like, yeah, you down here with us now. You know, people love when you down. Especially if they down. What's that saying? Misery loves company. So you know when somebody falls and you made fun of them and made sport of them because they made a mistake and fell off, and then you fall off.
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
That's nothing about Satan, his fall.
You know, I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that. What made you ask that question?
Just because Satan is called morning star as well as Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
How you have fallen from heaven. Satan fell for he was kicked out of
Mm-hmm.
heaven. So, and
It could be
he
some.
spoke, I will, because God spoke stuff into existence. So he's thinking he's speaking stuff into
And it didn't
existence.
happen because he's not God. So I will look into that and get back to you. That's a good question. You and Don always get me. But it's just a lot of, similarities, and it could be some symbolism there, so I'll look into that. So they were excited because, they were down, now he was down too. And there is a little note in my notes from this outline I have, a quotation mark that says Lucifer, so there's probably some truth to what you say, Betty, so I need to check into that, okay? It says, the king will have a dishonorable burial, his children slaughtered. So usually, when a great king dies, kind of like a former president dies, they lay in state and people come, observe the body, pay their respects, all that good stuff. They said he was going to be kicked out his tomb. So he wasn't going to get all the fanfare that everyone else got because, he messed up. He went against God's people. Even though God was using him to do so, he thought it was because of him and not because God was using him. And now it said even his children would be slaughtered. And then it talks about the summation of God's judgment and the desolation of Babylon. Now, boys, how would you feel if you got punished for something I did? He's like, yeah, that's not right. You know what I mean? For your children to get punished for it, but that's when, like I said, back then when you dishonor God, anybody that was connected to you was utterly destroyed. But then he goes on in chapter 14, verses 24 through 27. He jumps to Assyria and talks about God's purpose to destroy Assyria. And his purpose cannot be annulled, no matter, once he makes the decision to do something, there's not too much anyone can do to change God's mind. We change to and fro like the way he don't. He's a God that never changes. So when he makes a decision, it's pretty much it. So it don't matter what they did from here on out, his decision was made, and he was going to destroy them. And then, he don't spend much time with Assyria right here, because he jumps again to talk about the Philistines. And this happens right at the death of Ahaz. And he says the desolation of the Philistines is going to be total. It's going to be a total desolation. Like, he ain't going to partially destroy them. He's not going to partially take them out. He's going to take them out. And Zion, which is Jerusalem, shall provide refuge for God's people. So he's always going to take care of his people. And I think we can rest in that, that he's always going to take care of us. When we trust and obey him, he's going to take care of us. Because this is what this all boiled down to, is that the Israelites were destroyed by all these nations that God used, that he's now destroying because they didn't obey him. So if the Israelites would have just did what they were supposed to do, none of this destruction would have happened. Sometimes, we're wondering why we're going through what we're going through. And it's usually because we're not doing what we're supposed to do. We're trying to fix our problems ourselves instead of going to God. I always say, prayer should be our first response, not our last resort. You try everything else. Call mom, call daddy, call your sister, call your brother, go to the bank, try to borrow money from your friend. None of that working, then you pray. You know what I mean? We should pray first. And
powering off.
You getting on mine. This is trying to save battery. But let's look.
Connection successful.
Let's look at chapter 15, where God moves on, or not God, but God through Isaiah moves on to Moab. Moab.
Isaiah 15, a prophecy against Moab. Ar in Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. Ker in Moab is ruined, destroyed in a night. Dibon goes up to its temple, to its high places to weep. Moab wails over Nebo and Medeba. Every head is shaved, and every beard cut off. In the streets they wear sackcloth. On the roofs and in the public squares they all wail, prostrate with weeping. Heshbon and Elealeh cry out. Their voices are heard all the way to Jahaz. Therefore the armed men of Moab cry out, and their hearts are faint. My heart cries out over Moab. Her fugitives flee as far as Zoar, as far as Eglath Shalishah. They go up the hill to Luhith, weeping as they go. On the road to Horonaim, they lament their destruction. The waters of Nimrim are dried up, and the grass is withered. The vegetation is gone, and nothing green is left. So the wealth they have acquired and stored up, they carry away over the ravine of the poplars. Their outcry echoes along the border of Moab. Their wailing reaches as far as Eglaim. Their lamentation as far as Beer Elim. The waters of Dimon are full of blood, but I will bring still more upon Dimon. A lion upon the fugitives of Moab, and upon those who remain in the land.
We're going to continue through 16 because he's still talking about Moab. I know. Come on, buddy. Now, if I tried to stop it, it would have kept playing.
Isaiah 16. Send lambs as tribute to the ruler of the land, from Selah across the desert to the mount of daughter Zion. Like fluttering birds pushed from the nest, so are the women of Moab at the fords of the Arnon. Make up your mind, Moab says, render a decision. Make your shadow like night at high noon. Hide the fugitives, do not betray the refugees. Let the Moabite fugitives stay with you. Be their shelter from the destroyer. The oppressor will come to an end, and destruction will cease. The aggressor will vanish from the land. In love, a throne will be established. In faithfulness, a man will sit on it, one from the house of David, one who in judging seeks justice and speeds the cause of righteousness. We have heard of Moab's pride, how great is her arrogance. of her conceit, her pride, and her insolence. But her boasts are empty. Therefore the Moabites wail. They wail together for Moab, lament and grieve for the raisin cakes of Ker Hareseth. The fields of Heshbon wither, the vines of Sibmah also. The rulers of the nations have trampled down the choicest vines, which once reached Jazer and spread toward the desert. Their shoots spread out and went as far as the sea. So I weep, as Jazer weeps, for the vines of Sibmah, Heshbon, and Elealeh. I drench you with tears. The shouts of joy over your ripened fruit and over your harvests have been stilled. Joy and gladness are taken away from the orchards. No one sings or shouts in the vineyards. No one treads out wine at the presses. For I have put an end to the shouting. My heart laments for Moab like a harp, my inmost being for Ker Hareseth. When Moab appears at her high place, she only wears herself out. When she goes to her shrine to pray, it is to no avail. This is the word the Lord has already spoken concerning Moab. But now the Lord says, within 3 years, as a servant bound by contract would count them, Moab's splendor and all her many people will be despised, and her survivors will be very few and feeble.
Yes. Feeble, weak. Yeah, good question. Chapter 15 and 16 are basically, like I said, describing judgment against Moab. Desolation and wailing foretold for the cities of Moab. You know, it's folks are going to be crying out, help us. Why? Why us? Not realizing. You know, it's like when I was looking at this earlier today, it reminded me of the kid in the, not a kid this year, because actually my classes are great, but in the past, a kid that just cut the fool all day long. And then at the end of the day, when it's time to send that report home to mom, because I tell them every day, you know, every day I send, you know, whether it's a good day, you know, whatever. You cut up you kicked people in recess, you didn't do your work, you walked out the classroom without permission, you was hanging on the bathroom stall. What you think was gonna happen? Why I gotta lose recess? Well, you was running around throwing rocks at people during the first recess, so now you're not going out for the second. You know, this is how they were, as if they didn't know they had did something wrong. You know what I mean? This is you getting paid back. This is what you earn. This is what you deserve. Amen? It says, here's the crazy thing. It says, even the Lord will cry for Moab when drought and lions afflict the land. So it's going to be so bad that even God's like, man. That's what shows you that even his anger, he's still God and he's gracious and merciful. I mean, he didn't stop. But he was like, man, I really put it on now. Yes, sir.
This is Lot's people, right? Which is Abraham's nephew. So why was they so mean to Israel? I mean, they can.
I think because, it's just like, I think I could compare it to just like now, why are Christians persecuted? You know, when you're God's chosen people, when you're doing what you're supposed to do, there's always going to be those who are going to have it out for you. You know what I mean? Being God's people has never been easy. You think, you know, after example after example after example, they would fall in line, you know, but they don't, you know what I mean? Could be jealousy, could be hate, you know. Well, they think they special because they God's chosen people, you know. But little did they know if they could hold on a little while longer, they found out that when Jesus came, he's for everybody, you know.
But Abraham took
Mm-hmm. But still, Lot wasn't satisfied. And where did he end up? You know, and who went to get him? You know, it's like that wayward child. No matter, you know, how much you love them, how much you do for them, you know, they're going to do what they want to do. You know what I mean? No matter how much you love them, how much you pour into them, how much you sacrifice for them, they're still going to do what they want to do. Moab is encouraged to make peace with Israel. Show kindness to her outcasts for mercy. Justice and righteousness will come from one in the tabernacle of David. So this is going into chapter 16. So they are encouraged to do exactly what you said, Don, but they don't. You know what I mean? But then again, you know, we can't be too hard on them, because how many times have we not done, you know, what we're supposed to do, what we know we should do, you know, and we don't. Moab's notable pride and the coming desolation in verses 6 and 8 of 16. Pride it always says pride comes before a fall. That's in Proverbs. And pride is dangerous. You know what I mean? I know, Hope First Lady doesn't mind me sharing this, but when we decided to, you know, to come here, you know, her main thing was like, God, I want us to change. You know, let us stay humble, and that's something I pray often. You know what I mean? Because you know, Brother Phil, when people start patting you on the back and telling you how you preach that, you know, you can see, oh yeah, I did. That was a good message. You know, it's easy if you could easily fall into that. You know what I mean? And you know, I gotta be like, no, that's God. You know what I mean? Because really, you know, if it wasn't for Him, you know what I mean, I couldn't get up there and do nothing. You know, I couldn't sit here and teach you anything. You know, and so it doesn't even make sense for me to get prideful on something that's not even me. You know, the gift that He's given me, the gift that oh yeah, I can preach. Nah, God uses me to preach, and God uses me to teach. God uses me to pastor. I'm doing none of this on my own, because if I was doing it on my own, one, y'all wouldn't have voted me in last August, and two, if I snuck on through, y'all would be trying to vote and get me out. So it's all because of pride. Is, you know, and I never, you know, I see folks, you know, pastors and preachers who just. They get the pride, man. They get the big head. And next thing you know, you hear about a stumble, a fall, a mistake. My mother-in-law sent me a story the other day. Some preacher urinated on somebody on a plane. A preacher, a man of God, a pastor, said he was drunk. And said he had a drink. Not that he was drunk. I guess he was on some medication. And he thought he was at the restroom. The lady woke up to something warm. Realized he was a man of God. And he, you know, odds are, he probably was preaching, doing well, got the big head. I don't know the whole story, but so you gotta be careful. And you know, you teach so good. Well, how do you know? Like, so it's like, me and Shannon have this discussion all the time. Somebody like, you a good teacher. Another teacher says that to me. I'm like, how you know? You never see me teach. No, but you never see me teach because you teaching. So how you know I'm a good teacher? Yeah, 3 of your first grade students told me. Oh, the 6-year-old told you I was good. Okay. They're not too hard to impress. The Lord will wail at the destruction of Moab. That just baffles me. He's doing what, you know, he said he was going to do. Amen. But he kind of feels bad. The time period set for Moab's judgment is set. He said in 3 years, it's about to go down. At least they, you know. Yeah. these next two chapters are, what time is it? Let's stop. I want to ask you guys a couple questions. We're going to stop there. That's 4 chapters. I think 4 chapters is good for tonight.